Are you ready? Ready?
Apparently, I can start the intro twice. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that was kind of cool. It's like a remix version.
Remix version of the Parishscope intro. Uh, all right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Parishscope. This is the podcast that acts as an arm of the newsletter, the Parishscope, from St. John, Sand Prairie. I'm Pastor Chris Sansom.
And I'm Casey Dreamus. I'm the creative worship director at Our Savior Lutheran.
All right. Well, it's been a couple weeks, but I mean, hey, Easter, Holy Week. I know I was fairly busy. I'm sure you were as well with other things. So, actually, I don't know. Do you guys have to get a bunch of songs and stuff ready, don't you?
You know, it was actually kind of a weird thing this year because we had our Palm Sunday. I had a ton of music, which was actually kind of by accident.
Yeah.
Because I didn't realize we were going to do communion on Palm Sunday, and then we didn't do communion on Easter. So I planned a bunch of songs, and they're like, oh yeah, you need communion songs too. And I was like, oh, well, so I had to add communion songs. And then Easter was kind of a little bit lighter as far as how many songs we were doing. But I think it actually worked out okay because everybody wants to get to their family lunches and stuff. So it's like we didn't drag it on for too long, but we did a nice like medley of Easter hymns and stuff, and that was really fun.
Okay.
So, yeah. But how was it at Sand Prairie?
Oh, it was good. It was really good, actually. Yeah, just a great time, joyous service. I love the ancient quote unquote triduum, the 3-part service. Probably my favorite service, 3-part service of the year. Big service, but anyway, I absolutely love it. So I look forward to it every year. So as much as I'm exhausted, I'm also like, I completely love being able to be there and just being a part of that. So yeah, no, absolutely, I love that. And Easter, of course, was really nice as well. Again, I will say this is like one of those things like you just don't necessarily think about, but like, in Christmas or Christmas Eve and Easter, it's like for everybody else, it's such a relaxing time and it's such a time to gather together with family. And it's like, for me, I'm out. I'm done. Like, yeah. I make it to the end of the services and I am just so tired. And it's like, you guys go do your family stuff. I'm going to go lay down here. So, and it is one of those interesting things where it's like, for a lot of people, they're all like, oh, this is a great time. And it is a great time. And that's the way it should be. The one who's leading worship should be tired and the one who isn't shouldn't be. So, so it's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different role, I guess. Oh man. So the news story for today, and I kind of this is one of those things I've been hitting on this one pretty hard, but every now and again we kind of see, this kind of phenomenon, dare I say, pop up. But over Easter weekend, the number of Catholics in the world grew to over 1.4 billion for the first time. And I don't know if it's the first time ever or if it's the first time in just a really long time. So just to, again, just to put that into perspective, I don't think everybody realizes how big the Catholic Church is. And I know we've talked about this in the past.
Yeah.
Like the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod has about 2 million people. Actually, it's just under. It's like something like 1.6, 1.7 million. And we're one of the larger Catholic churches. We're one of the larger Lutheran churches in America. Now, the largest Lutheran church in America is actually the ELCA. That's the very liberal body. Now, they've actually been shrinking over the last couple of years, but they're still at like 7 or 8 million. At their peak, they had over 10 million. So they've been shrinking over the last several years. Probably the biggest non-Catholic church in the United States is the Baptist, Southern Baptist to be particular. And the Southern Baptist have, I want to say something like 20 to 25 million members throughout the United States. Maybe they might be up to 30. I'm not sure, but 20, 25, maybe 30 million, something like that. To
Wow.
put that into perspective, the Catholic Church in America alone has something like 50 million.
Yeah.
So,
That's
so
crazy.
yeah, so you can combine all kinds of denominations and shove all the people together. And it's one of those things where like I realize like the Southern Baptist and a lot of these other groups make a lot of noise. They're very noisy in what they do. They have, I mean, like we talk about Joel Osteen sometimes in his church that can fit something like 30,000 people, and it's like, wow, that's huge. But like at the same time, just realize the magnitude of the Catholic Church. And
Yeah.
worldwide, the Catholic Church now has over 1.4 billion. It's 1.406 is the number.
Wow.
And a large number of those joined the church over Easter. And so okay, this is fascinating on a couple different fronts. First of all, they joined through the I forget what it's actually called, but it's the more the ancient style of joining a church, and something I've talked about here in the past. We've implemented actually small sections of it at Sam Prairie, but they have a fancy name for it. It's OIAAC, something like that.
Yeah.
But initiation, achievement, whatever it all stands for, I forget. But anyway, but now here's the other thing. It wasn't all in America, and in fact, most of it was actually over in Africa. Africa is Christianity as a whole, but Catholicism in particular is spreading like hotcakes. So most of the Catholics in the world still are in the Americas, not in America, but in the Americas, like North and South America.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what something like I think it's like Brazil has something like 180 million Catholics.
Oh wow.
So yeah, it's like America isn't the number one. But in the Americas, so to speak.
Right.
We have highest big time of Catholics in the Americas, but Africa is growing at such a rate that it might actually overtake the Americas at some point.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And we've seen leaps and bounds, by the way, in our own, denomination, including, Lutheranism. I know that one of the biggest Lutheran churches is actually over in Africa as well. One of our quote unquote sister churches that we kind of joined in fellowship with about 6 to 9 years ago, was actually kind of an African church over there. And I know there's another one that was an Ethiopian church, and it was like, yeah, we kind of joined fellowship with them, and they had like 10 million people. And again, here we are, the LCMS thinking we're the big dog on campus, and like we're joining fellowship with another church that's, 5 times the size of ours.
That's incredible, though. I mean, really, that's really amazing to think about. Just the magnitude of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and again, it's one of those things. Now we've talked a little bit about this because one of the things that we're also seeing is that we're seeing a lot of Gen Zers actually begin to approach church, and a lot of it is Gen Z men. And the two things that become incredibly attractive about the Catholic Church compared to other churches is one is the history of it. They absolutely love the deep history. And in fact, the deep tradition as well. And it's one of those things like we have a tendency to make it sound like our tradition is to be hidden. Like people will be scared away by it. But the reality is actually the opposite. Like I'm not saying you don't need to adjust things as you go. Of course you do. But at the same time, like don't hide who you are. Don't hide your tradition. And that's one thing that we've kind of learned from this. And then the other thing is basically the Catholic Church actually still stands in terms of, dare I say, men and women's roles. And, and again, I know some of the more progressive Catholics, and they are progressive Catholics, tend to be very loud and boisterous, but the church itself still actually has a number of doctrines that are very, very clear in terms of the roles of men and women. And on top of that, like, disciplines. And I think that's
Mhm.
one of the things that like men in particular are really drawn to, like this idea of disciplines. They have rules for everything, and I think a lot of guys actually like that. They like to, dare I say, be told like you can do this, but you can't do that, and here's the discipline that you need to do, and here's how you earn things.
Mhm.
Lutherans will never do kind of the penance kind of thing, but yet that is something that actually draws young men, right?
Yeah.
They have to, in essence, do something hard and challenging and difficult to kind of, dare I say, earn themselves. Like so, and that is a very attractive thing to especially a bunch of men that have been pushed to the sidelines for a very long time, and basically told that you're useless, which is a lot of times the secular and progressive cultures tend to do. And again, not saying that all of them do it, not saying anything in particular, just saying that that is a tendency for a lot of them.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, so they had a number of people joining the church. The Catholic Church itself was slightly overwhelmed, and so they've hit record numbers. Now some people have called this the quiet. What is it? The quiet revival.
Yeah.
Some people have called it some other stuff. There is some I guess some statistics that are coming out, and some of them are faulty and have been called out on it for being faulty. But again, it is just very fascinating to think about, and it's very fascinating to watch. Um, I think if there's young men out there that are intrigued by stuff like this, um, kudos to them, first of all. But don't be seduced necessarily by the Catholic Church. Like again, the Catholic Church has a lot of good things, and a lot of the things that we've been mentioning are good things. Maybe not so much the penance, that's not necessarily good, but a lot of the other things are actually very, very good. But that's just it. Like some of the other things that they kind of slide in on you, it's like it's not so good, and some of the theology can get very dicey and bad.
Yeah.
So anyway, but no, so that was kind of my news story. And I know we've talked about this to death, but at the same time, it's like, you look at some of it, and that was a big story over the weekend, because Easter weekend, as these guys joined the church, and it was like, oh, okay, they hit over 1.4 billion.
Yeah.
So.
It really is awesome just to see that people are wanting to go to church, because, I think I kind of grew up in a generation where I watched a lot of people my age like leave the church and kind of, I don't know, kind of get swayed and, I don't know, like seduced by the idea of kind of like the secular world, and that it's okay to not follow God, and it's okay not to you know, oh, who needs a family? Who needs this? Who needs that? All this stuff. And then, I'm seeing some of those people now that they've kind of missed out on a lot in life,
Yeah.
or they're not doing well, you know. As we know, like mental health is a big
Oh yeah.
issue on the rise. And it's funny because when I was growing up, it was all these people being like, church is stupid and I'm not doing that anymore. And then all of a sudden, all the, 10, 15 years later, it's like everybody's having anxiety attacks.
Yeah.
So, it's, yeah.
Well, and this kind of brings us, you bring up the mental health thing, and I think that's actually a brilliant thing to kind of tie together with all this, because it is very true. Like, so you look at the history of some of this stuff, and it's like, of course we got a long history, and it does kind of go in waves. The wave that we're talking about here, we have a title for that, and it's called piety. Piety or holy living, or this idea of being holy by your actions. And so what we're experiencing right now is a pietistic movement of sorts. And and again, there's some good things about that if it's done right, and there's some bad things about that if it's done wrong. um this goes back to like, even all the way back to Luther himself, as he was kind of going through Holy Scripture, like the Catholic Church at the time had made so many rules and so many regulations that it was like it was an impossibility.
Mm-hmm.
But even as we look at from a cultural standpoint, you see these kind of waves go back and forth. It's like one will increase in piety, and then the other one will say, okay, piety has its flaws, we need to loosen up. and then they'll get too loose, and then all of a sudden the other crowd will come in and say, wait, this is too loose for me. We need some rules, we need some boundaries. And then you'll see like a rebirth of the pietistic movement as it kind of comes back in. And that's and to some degree that's kind of what we're seeing, right? Like we had this postmodern thing that happened, right around 1989, 1990-ish, and like you saw like everybody redefined, morality, and morality became like more relativism, and it became like, well, what do you think is right, and that's what's right, and it's just kind of like, morality as a whole is relative, and if morality is relative, then how can you make rules about it? And you're kind of seeing like it. I think to some degree that in particular, the movement in particular that's really pushed this very heavily has been the transgender movement.
Yeah.
The transgender movement as a whole has so many things going on that are just, I think whenever there was a push back in the early 2000s for like homosexual marriage and stuff like that, I think you got some of it, but I think most people in general kind of just got over it. Maybe they didn't like it, or maybe they still felt it was a sin, but it was like, you know what, let them do them, and that's fine. Just don't bug me, kind of thing. And I think as Christians, that's kind of where we were too. Like there's a lot of churches that just kind of accepted it, but then there's a lot of us like the LCMS that basically said, look, you can make the laws whatever you want, but we're still going to call a sin a sin. And that was just kind of where we stood at, and it's like, by all means, go do your own thing, but don't do your own thing and then think about like the church is going to just accept it. Like we don't.
Yeah.
Right. And so you saw a little bit of that, but it was kind of almost like this, like, you leave me alone and I'll leave you alone. And
I would agree.
With the transgender movement, I think you almost saw the push go too far. You saw this, you're seeing some of these guys that, whether they're faking or whether they honestly believe that they're in the wrong body, but they're going in the boxing ring with women, and they're just pummeling them, or they're getting in these races and they're absolutely destroying, what the women are doing. And I think that there's a little bit of righteous anger there. And while all this at the same time, it's like we're trying to take the voice of men away. And so I think a lot of the men kind of just revolted. They kind of said, okay, you've loosened up a little too much. Now we need to go back, now. And so I think you are starting to see a very much a pietistic movement that's heading in that direction. And again, I think it's one of those things, like my hope, again, this is, if history serves, what'll happen is the pietistic movement is going to grow and grow and grow. And then it'll become almost legalism part 2, it'll come almost to, obnoxious levels. And then people will go, well, we need to lighten this up a little bit. And I hope it doesn't do that. I hope they actually think through it and go, okay, these are some good things, but let's actually talk about why they're good. And let's actually talk about, not just doing the things to do them. Like, tonight for dinner, I had a meal that I'll be honest, I really did not love, but I did it because I knew why I did it, right? Because it was healthy, and and as much as it wasn't maybe the greatest thing that has ever, that I've ever eaten, at least I know it was filling, it was nutritious, and it wasn't the worst thing either. Like, it wasn't the best thing, but it wasn't the worst thing. It was actually pretty decent, I'd say. So, and it's like, but I know why I'm doing that. Now, if I was just eating gross things just to eat gross things, or things that I didn't like just to eat things that I didn't like, well, that makes no sense. So,
yeah, it is funny. You mentioning the fact of almost like people kind of just got over it a little bit with like same-sex marriage and stuff. And it's funny because that's one thing I notice a lot when I see people kind of getting on their, like, going after political parties online, is that a lot of times I see people saying stuff that I'm like, that I think in my mind, back in 2001, that is how I think most like conservatives viewed things. But they're not there anymore, dude. It's like I think I grew up in a pretty conservative household, and I think that stuff like homeless situation, I think a lot of conservatives traditionally back in the day really viewed it as like, well, they're lazy,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And now it's kind of like with all the illegal alien stuff or illegal immigrant stuff, I hear a lot of conservatives saying stuff like, why aren't we taking care of our own people first? We have people on the streets. We should be taking care of them first.
Yeah.
And it's just funny because then I'll see people who are like, I know you don't care about the homeless. I'm like, actually, I have not heard anybody really say that in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, and it's that I think that counterbalancing things have gone so far one direction that it's like we kind of have to just accept some things or just say, okay, fine. Like you said, you make the law whatever you want. Well, that's whatever, but we're still going to view it the way we view it. Yeah, I just think it's interesting. And I know this is a silly way to say it, but when I was a senior in high school, I remember they got senior shirts, like all the seniors wanted to get these shirts, and on the shirts they had like the F word on them.
Oh,
and I just so you know, I didn't get a shirt. My mother would not. She didn't let me watch Ninja Turtles. She is not going to let me wear a shirt with the F word on it. So yeah,
man, I love the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, and I didn't do Halloween, so
right.
it's like we're not. I'm not getting that. But I remember a teacher. These kids were all they told the kids they can't wear them.
Yeah,
of course all the kids are like, no, it's our shirt, and they're all trying to argue it. And I remember a teacher saying to these seniors, like we were in class, and they said, if we let you guys have that shirt, what are the next year's seniors going to do? And what is the group after that going to do? And like, you don't understand that it's only going to get worse year after year after year. And it was like, I remember hearing that and thinking, you're absolutely right. If you let one group do this thing and it's inappropriate and not, not acceptable, the next group's going to go, well, they got away with this. And they're going to push it even farther.
Yeah.
Can we do this? And it just, and that's, I don't know. That's kind of how the world goes. And I don't know. We're with us all being humans and being flawed, that's kind of, you're talking about how, like the church seems to go like in this big direction. And then, it's like, we're kind of in this sort of resurgence back to traditional values because it kind of got away from that for a while. And so, but the thing is, it's very tempting to have power. So even though I'm glad people are going to church and they should be going to church, there's always going to be some person out there, and it's not the majority, but there's always going to be one or two people who are like, well, standing up there, a lot of people listen to you, and I would like to have a little bit of, influence. Yeah. It's like, we're just flawed humans, unfortunately. And so we'll see where it ends up in another, 20 years or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, we'll see. I mean, this is the first time we've seen a resurgence like this, like in my lifetime anyway. I mean, again, we kind of started big whenever I was in the 80s and the 90s. So, but this is one of the biggest resurgences that I've noticed from a statistical, because I mean, since I've been a pastor, it seems like year after year, they're like, oh, things are looking dark. Things are looking dim. And this is the first time where people say, well, there's some hope out there. And I can't say this is the first time. I actually saw this a few years back. They were talking about the southern districts in the LCMS. And it was almost like they'd hit rock bottom, and then all of a sudden they were started to grow. And so I think you saw an inkling of this. And again, also, I don't want to make too much out of this either, because it's like, what if this fizzles out real quick? Like, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I can only tell you what I see and what I hear. And like, I listen to certain podcasts about, leadership and yada, yada, yada. And they talk about these kind of things. And again, it's fascinating and it's interesting to talk about. And you do kind of see it to some degree. And again, I just, again, with the waves of culture, I just hope that you don't see this go the opposite direction, go to that extreme pietistic direction too much. Because again, then you get into all kinds of other issues. And again, Catholicism as a whole, they're kind of notorious for that too. Again, they're not necessarily known for that. Like there's a few things that that they're known for, and unfortunately, a lot of those things are negative and news and headlines and and all that kind of stuff. But when you get into the Catholic Church as a whole, it's it's a machine. Like they got the answers, and I mean, and in fairness, they've they've had a lot of time to write about this stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
well, I kind of think that too. Like, there's a lot of people I think that believe that Catholics are like stupid or silly, and it's like they're not. They're absolutely not. If you think that you are just the greatest theologian on the face of the earth, try to go toe to toe with Jesuit. Good luck.
Yeah.
I mean, some of those guys are just crazy smart. Now, that's not to say that we don't have our own, so to speak, like intelligent people. I mean, like the guy that taught my class, Dr. Okamoto, was one of the smartest people I think I've ever run across in my life. And
Yeah.
still to this day, I don't think I've ever met his equal.
Yeah.
The man was a monster. And it's one of those things where I think about that especially with my professors. Like, my my one professor that taught me like liturgy and stuff. He was one of 25 people selected worldwide for Notre Dame for a special class on liturgy.
Oh, wow.
Program that they
That's
had. And so
that's
you know what it would take to be selected for a liturgical program in a Catholic school and beat all the Catholics. I mean, think about it. And then Dr. Okamoto, was graduated MIT with his doctorate in 3 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then decided to come back and get a THD. Now, THD is what a theological doctorate used to be called.
Oh, gotcha.
Now they're all just PhDs, but it used to be called a THD. But he came to seminary and then got his THD. So he has
Wow.
he's a double doctorate, and one of them was in like MIT, like chemical engineering or something. I don't even know. I don't remember what it was, but it was.
My goodness.
But yeah, again, he was incredibly intelligent.
Yeah.
And and it's like, yeah. So some, I'm not. I don't want to make it sound like the Catholics are just the smartest people, and they're not. But at the same time, it's like we have a tendency to dumb people down and think that they're stupid. And I think I personally probably say I sometimes do that with the megachurch guys.
Yeah.
Some of those megachurch guys are really slick. And some of them are really, really intelligent folks.
Yeah.
I would say that most of them are probably not the best theologians. They're usually really slick in other areas. I was actually watching some videos as I kind of prepared today, and lo and behold, they were Joel Osteen videos.
Yeah.
I've been looking for some sound bites for him.
Yeah.
The problem is he's such a long talker. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
he takes forever to get to his point, and so he doesn't ever quite say it.
He does.
And so he does.
Yes.
And so he doesn't ever quite say it. So I'm like looking for a soundbite of having him just say, "This is what I believe," and be like, "Look, there it is." But it's like you don't get that. Instead, he kind of like beats around the bush and kind of walks all over the place. And so
that's the right thing to do politically.
Yeah.
Just don't really answer.
But I watched a video of like some behind the scenes stuff with him, and it was fascinating.
I bet that is, honestly.
Yeah. He was like talking about, the crowds, and he was talking about positions of the camera and where he needs to stand. And and again, I don't think he's a good theologian. I think he's actually quite a terrible one. However, he is very good at, staging his craft and thinking through about how he's going to look and where he's going to look, and all this kind of is like the stuff that he thinks about is insane. You know, it's just, I mean, again, I don't think it's good, but it's,
it's, I find this with doing social media and stuff like that. It's interesting because I've watched a lot of videos on how to present things better and how to sound more professional. And one of the things I've had to do is talk slower, because my brain is not very fast, but my mouth is a lot faster than my brain. and I have to physically make myself speak a little slower. And one of the things they'll tell you to do, which I don't do on purpose when we do like a podcast, but I do it in some videos, is every once in a while they say, change your rhythm a little bit and say one word really slowly, because it kind of emphasizes and it gives the audience a chance to actually take a mental break. You see what I mean?
I
But there's nothing,
can do
and the
that.
thing is, you could kind of use that in a way
Yeah.
that you could kind of manipulate people. Because I could tell a story, like you said, Joel Osteen kind of beats around the bush. I could tell you probably a pretty convincing sounding story that doesn't really have a point if I use that technique. But if I'm telling you really good theology, that's in using that,
Yeah.
idea, it can really help just get the point across a little better.
Yeah.
But again, you can use it for, it's like, I feel like money. You can donate money to charity, or you can, use money for, drugs. The money can be used either way. It's the person and how they use it, which is the important, which makes the difference.
So what's really funny is right now what we are actually talking about is rhetorical devices. And this was in some of the earlier writings of St. Augustine, because they asked St. Augustine if they could use rhetoric. And he ultimately ended up on the side of saying, yes, you can use rhetoric, i.e. rhetorical devices. So again, it's just one of those weird connections that my brain just decided to make all of a sudden. So
Yeah.
for what it's worth, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're
pretty
right on
interesting.
par with St. Augustine.
Wow. You know what? That is probably the highest praise I've ever gotten.
Yeah, right there. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
Congratulations.
That's so nice.
Oh man. Well, we spent 31 minutes. It looks like, according to my clock, it looks like we spent 30 minutes on our article. So where do we want to go next?
Well, would you mind doing no stupid questions?
I don't mind at all.
All right. So this is a conversation I had over this past week.
Okay.
With a family member, and this person, I'm not going to say who, but they do attend church, and it's kind of an interesting thing, because I hear this argument a lot from the secular world when they're trying to label the church as sexist, or they put down women, or all that sort of narrative. And the thing I find very interesting is they said, oh, well, all us women, we're supposed to just submit and do whatever our husband tells us. And what always really, like, it doesn't tick me off, but what frustrates me is that every time one of these things gets said, the conversation quickly gets interrupted, and I can't get into it with them and try to explain, because to me, that's always the argument of, well, women are supposed to just serve men, but there's a lot in the Bible about men and how they are supposed to be treating their wife and women, that they always leave that part out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's been some pretty toxic pastors, like we've discussed before, who they even leave it out. They just kind of focus on what women need to do. But
yeah,
I wanted to bring that up as a topic, as what are men's roles in relationships, or in general as a man, as a Christian man.
So let's actually break this down, because we this is one of those conversation pieces that comes up quite a bit, and and obviously we were even hitting on it a little bit in terms of even my question, really, or my news article.
I felt like it fit.
What's really fascinating about this is that you can actually see this not just in terms of scripture, but also biologically. So first of all, let's cover the basis. Like, yes, the Bible says women, our wives are to submit to their husband, but it also says that husbands are to love their wives. Now, love in the ancient world, was not necessarily like hearts and butterflies, but was actual action, but more specifically sacrificial action. And Paul, in his letter to the Ephesians, actually pretty much makes it clear that men are to sacrifice of themselves for the sake of their wife. So a woman places herself underneath her husband because from there she can lift him up. But then the husband sacrifices of himself for the sake of his wife because that's where he can lift her up.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of becomes this like almost like element of I don't want to say competition, but it's almost like you're both trying to lift the other person up. In marriage, it's not where you focus on yourself, but you focus on your partner, and your partner doesn't focus on themselves, they focus on you. And so you end up supporting one another and lifting each other up. Now that's the perfect world, right? And we don't always live in a perfect world.
Right.
You know, sometimes we find that we have needs and you know and we just we have to address those needs, whether or not, you know, we're gonna have like a mental break or something, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, sometimes if the man is working, you know, 80-90 hours a week, he's just not going to have time to, you know, get all the jobs that need to be done around the house. You know,
Yeah.
he just can't. And the same thing with the wife. Maybe the wife is she's working, or she's busy, or she's got this to do and that to do, you know, and she's got a million other things going on, and she might not have time to lift up her husband. And again, so you got to realize we live in a sinful world where this doesn't always work out as perfect as we want. But in the grand scheme of this messy, messy world, when we look at things, by and large, your man should be sacrificing of himself to lift up his wife, and his wife should be in a role of submission, but mainly so that she can lift up her husband, so that she can support her husband.
Mm-hmm.
With that, though, there are certain rules, or I shouldn't say rules, roles that each of them play. Again, I don't want, so the Bible doesn't necessarily say that a man is better than a woman, or a woman is better than a man.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty
Because
yeah.
I feel like that is one of those things that people act like is, you know, oh yeah, you know, men are above women.
Yeah, no, it's not so much that, but we do have differing roles. And some of the, like, so for instance, you know, the man is to love his wife and, you know, in essence be courageous and sacrifice for her. Like if an intruder breaks in the house, so to speak, and attacks the family, um you know, this is where the man should step up, and the man should be like, yeah, over my dead body, and mean it.
Yeah.
You know, the only way you're going to get to my wife and kids is by me being dead. And that's just all there is to it. And, you know, that is part of his calling. That is part of who he is. And so, you know, one of the things that we've talked about that, like, is in the discipline of being a man, one of the things that all men should be to some degree, as long as it's physically possible. I mean, like, I realize that some people have physical disabilities, but as long as it's like possible, a man should be in at least good enough shape to protect his own home. You know, in one way or the other, he should be prepared to protect. And that is part of his goal. That is part of who he is. It's part of how he's been designed. In the same way, in terms of women nurturing children, by and large, women should nurture children because they're really gifted at it. Now, again, are there exceptions to the rule? Of course. Are there some women that are really good at protecting the home? I guess. Yeah, I'm sure there are. And just like there are some men that are really good at nurturing their children. And so you don't want to say, oh, like you can't ever do this and yada yada yada. But at the same time, by and large, these are the roles that we have been given. Now what's really fascinating about this is we talk about this, and we talk about, you know, especially Ephesians 5, where a lot of this stuff comes in. The reality is that we are beginning to understand that this is also true biologically. One of the fascinating studies, and I've quoted this study several times. I need to, one of these days, I'm just going to look it up and read the study on the podcast. But like, they did this interesting study with infants, and you know, and you can see this because like even the way men and women handle, even when we're doing something similar, are even the same. Like if you watch I don't know. Let's say you're watching kids play soccer, you know, and you're watching the coaches. How the coach approaches a little girl and a little boy are two different things. And as they get older, the coaching strategies is still going to be different. You know, a little girl, misses the goal, and a lot of times, like the coach, whoever that is, will try to be in a very emotional, kind of come down on a very emotional side of things. Like, it's okay, we're going to try it again. Maybe get a little frustrated, but at the same time, kind of be like, we're just going to keep going.
Mhm.
Whereas with a young boy, a lot of times, the name calling comes out, and they'll be like, why are you kicking? Like, you're kicking like you're 2 years old, and are you a baby? And yeah, it's like this really gruff, attitude.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, that's actually, part of the way, because men and women are created different. And one of the studies that actually looked into this, they looked at the eyes. And if you see a little baby, and let's say the baby's dressed in green, right? You don't know if it's a boy baby or a girl baby.
Uh-huh.
It's in green. And you stare at the baby in the eyes. Within about anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes, you can figure out if it's a boy or a girl, just by
Interesting.
staring at it in the eyes,
Yeah.
because
Huh.
the little girl will stare right back at you. She won't break eye contact. She'll
Oh,
stare at you in the eyes. The little boy, even though he's just an infant, his brain is so wired to look for threats that his eyes will start darting all over the place.
that is so interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm not making this up. My That's exactly how my children were. I have a boy, a girl, and a boy, and my sons both, like, they were just all, they didn't look at you. They were all over the place. My daughter,
Yeah.
I mean, we had she was born by C-section, and I held her, and and her eyes were open, and the first time I held her, she stared straight into my eyes.
Yeah.
And I know there's probably people like, oh, she probably can't even really see that. I know. I mean, I know but it was the craziest thing. I mean, for you to say that, I didn't really know that, but it's completely true. She stared straight at me and didn't break eye contact.
Yeah.
And that's interesting.
Yeah. No, so a guy's brain is just almost like wired to look for threats and to protect. And so yeah, like, I mean, again, it's one of the things, like, God wired us this way, and we are this way biologically as well.
Right.
And our brains just function completely different, and we have, certain things, and so again, we're talking about men and women's roles, and it's like, again, are there exceptions to these rules? Of course there are. Your scenario, where you're at. But deep down, the answer is we do have differing roles. We just do.
Uh-huh.
And you know um this is where we get into, like, men are the spiritual head of the household, and it's true. Like, kids, generally speaking, will follow their fathers.
Mhm.
And if your dad doesn't go to church, more than likely you won't either. Now, again, is there exceptions? Of course there are. But at the same time, like, there's also a lot of truth in that. Like, statistically speaking, we can kind of show you this. It's, like, incredible. It's wild. Like,
Yeah.
70 some percent of kids will go to church if their dad goes to church, but not their mom. But only like 30 some will go to church if their mom goes to church, but not their dad.
Mhm.
It's like wicked.
Yeah.
And if mom and dad both go to church, and they talk about it at home anyway, it's like 82% chance of staying in the church.
Uh-huh.
So there's just a lot of, like, little stats and things that we can kind of point to and direct to, and it's like, but at the end of the day, it comes down to, basically talking it over with your spouse, figuring out which way will support the other the most, and making sure that both of you ultimately live a good and fulfilled life, and try to do your best to do the will of the Lord. And that's going to mean that you're going to have some spiritual disciplines, and you're going to have to make sure that your kids go to church, and make sure that you
Mhm.
have those roles. Now, I did want to mention one other thing before I kind of jet off on this one. And that is this. We have a tendency to look at things like, for instance, the man is the spiritual head of the household, and we say, oh, so God's saying the man is better than the woman. Not so. Not so at all. This is kind of like the quintessential, like everybody wants to be the boss until you're the boss. And once you're the boss, you realize
Yeah.
how awful it is being the boss.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of what this is. Adam was the word bearer. He was the one that was supposed to bear God's word. And he failed. He failed miserably. This is why Eve, again, look, there's a reason that the Bible basically says this is all Adam's fault.
Yeah.
It talks about women in a passing role, but not because they're unimportant, but because the person who was supposed to be responsible was Adam, and Adam didn't do his job. And so, it's his burden to be the word bearer. And the same thing goes on, here. Like, it's still men's responsibility to be the word bearer. And one of the things that you're seeing is, like, especially, the church of the 90s and the early 2000s, that men failed. They didn't do their jobs,
Yeah.
And it's like, again, no. This is not meant to be men are better than women. It's supposed to be, this is men's job, and they need to do it.
Yeah.
They need to step up.
Yes. Yeah. It is, yeah. When you said about everybody wants to be in charge until they actually experience it, that is, I mean, I've been in, a lot of leadership positions, and mostly, to do with music, but being the leader of a group is not always a very, I don't know, I don't have the right way to say it, but it's not always the most rewarding, or it's not as rewarding as some people assume it is. You get a lot, I've had some groups I've run, and I get a lot of crap, and I've had a lot of nasty things said to me, and I'm just trying to run, I'm just trying to make a good experience for a bunch of people, and I'll have people who are just really, really nasty to me. Now this is a group outside of like a church, luckily, but
Yeah.
it wasn't. And then there are some people who kind of acted like, well, I should be in charge. It's like, I don't think you want to be,
Yeah.
because it's kind of miserable being the person in charge. So yeah, I relate to that, because it is not always what people think it's going to be,
Yeah. Oh, exactly. But it's definitely, I guess the big thing though is it's definitely not saying like one is better than the other. That's not it at all. And if that's the understanding you're going to come away with, then you're kind of reading it wrong.
Or you're listening to what other people are saying.
Yeah.
And taking that as truth, and it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, like, look, if you want to flip things on their head and kind of go the other route, like the job that women have of nurturing their children. And again, just put that caveat. I know that there's somebody out there that's going to say, well, there's exceptions, and there are exceptions, but there's also a reason that women tend to go towards even careers where they nurture, whereas like, think about therapists or school teachers or nurses, and like, they want to nurture. That's part of the thing that they're really into. And so they just kind of have that role. And so, I mean, again, it's not a better than them. It's just a reality of that, that we each kind of have our own role that we have to play in this. And it's not about one being more important than the other. But where I was going with that is, like, there was a weird study done. It's an awful study, if I'm really honest. And it was done in the 1930s, and the 1930s, and they and this was, by the way, this was in America. They tested what would happen if a child was not nurtured, and let's just say that it was awful. Like, they had to stop the study because of the mortality rates.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
So, yeah.
Well, I know we probably kind of talked about this before, and maybe that's even been one of my questions in the past. I don't know, but it is, it's interesting when I hear people bring it up, because that's kind of a common thing. I see a lot of people online say that too. And like, say stuff about, oh, these Christians and, oh, women better not talk, or it's like, that's not what it's saying at all.
Yeah.
I
No.
don't.
No.
But if enough people say it and you don't research it, or you don't ask a pastor,
Yeah.
to explain what's really going on, people just believe it as a fact, and they start. And my my family member was saying, well, it says in the Bible that women are less than men, and I don't think it says that. So
Well, and again,
very,
like
very
if
interesting.
and again, I'm trying to think of some verses that they might say, and there's some verses that might seem to say that, but again, it's one of those things where you got to look at it in terms of role and not so much in terms of value. That's what we're doing. See, as a culture, we have a tendency to make it in terms of value, and that's just not what the Bible is saying. It's not
Yeah.
saying that like Eve is less value than Adam, but there
Yeah.
are certain roles where maybe in that role, Adam has a higher value than Eve.
Mhm.
Sure, but just there's other roles where Eve is going to have a higher value than Adam.
Right.
So,
We all have our specialties, sort of, to say, but
yeah, exactly. So, all right. Well, I think we've done that one.
yep.
All right. So we got to move. I just looked at the clock. I'm like, oh man, we got to move. All
Yeah,
right.
we gotta move.
All right. So here we go.
Welcome now to Saints in the Shadows. Hear the stories of the saints, learn about things you never knew. See if you can figure out who the saint is before the end.
All right. All right. So our saint for today. Some men are born into belief. Others fall into it. And then there are those rare few who hunt it down. They refuse inherited answers. They refuse quiet doubts. They refuse to stop asking questions until truth itself answers back. In the 2nd century, when gods were many and certainty was scarce, there lived such a man, restless, educated, relentless. And for tonight, we're going to call him the seeker who would not stop. He was born near the edge of an empire, and well, basically in Rome, in a Roman colony that smelled of sea, wind, and argument. Neapolis, today's Nablus, was a place where philosophies crossed paths as often as traders did. His family was pagan, his upbringing Roman, very Roman, his mind sharp and endlessly dissatisfied. From a young age, he read everything. Plato intrigued him, Aristotle disappointed him, the Stoics, well, they impressed him until they grew cold. The Pythagoreans demanded too much mathematics and too little meaning. Each system promised wisdom, but each fell short. The seeker wanted not just ideas, but truth. Something that could shape a life, anchor the soul, answer the question that haunted every lecture hall and portico. What is worth dying for? Then, one ordinary day, walking along the shore, the seeker met an old man. No robe of authority, no school behind him, just questions. The old man spoke of prophets older than philosophies, of a logos not imagined but incarnate, of a God who entered history not through arguments, but through love and suffering. The seeker argued. The old man answered. And when they parted, something had shifted. The seeker had found what philosophy could not give him. He became a Christian. However, here's where the story turns. Conversion did not end his seeking, it refined it. Rather than abandon philosophy, the seeker put it to use. He donned the philosopher's cloak, a visible sign of a teacher, and walked the cities of the empire, explaining Christianity not as superstition, but as the fulfillment of everything philosophy had been reaching for. He taught that Christ was the true logos, the word behind all reason, that whatever is true belongs to God, wherever it is found, that Christians did not fear inquiry because truth had nothing to fear from questions. This made him useless to the mobs and dangerous to the authorities. Because the seeker wrote, he wrote what's known as apologies, not apologies of regret, like I'm sorry, but formal defenses addressed directly to emperors. He explained Christian worship. He argued against false accusations. He described baptism, Holy Communion, Sunday gatherings, not in secret, in daylight, for the world to read. Christianity, he insisted, was not a threat to reason or order. What it threatened was falsehood, and falsehood doesn't surrender quietly. There was, in Rome, another philosopher, skilled, bitter, jealous. He lost debates, he lost students, and he noticed the seeker gaining both. So he did what failed philosophers sometimes do. He denounced. The seeker was arrested with a small group of his students. They were brought before the prefect. No screaming crowds, no torches, just questions, simple ones. Do you believe you will be rewarded after death? The seeker answered calmly. We do not suppose we know. Do you worship the gods? No. Will you sacrifice? No. The prefects warned him, offered mercy, offered escape. The seeker refused. Not dramatically, not defiantly, reasonably. He believed Christianity was true. He believed truth deserved loyalty. And if philosophy was the love of wisdom, then martyrdom, he said, was simply being consistent. Sentence passed, death ordered, and the students, young men who had followed his teaching, followed him to the end. However, here's the thing. The seeker did not die for a creed he barely understood. He died for one he had tested, argued, explored, and chosen. He met Christ not by abandoning reason, but by following it all the way to the cross. He showed the world that faith need not flee the mind, that Christianity does not fear philosophers, that truth, once found, also asks for everything, and the seeker who would not stop had a name. A name signed at the end of fearless letters, a name remembered every time reason and faith meet without apology, a name the church honors not because he sought death, but because he refused to lie to avoid it. His name was Justin, philosopher, apologist, martyr. And so it is that on April 14th, we celebrate Saint Justin Martyr. Justin Martyr. So he's our saint in the shadow. Now, in terms of some of the other stuff, one of the interesting things I found as I was kind of looking some of this stuff up, one of the recipes I found was for a Mediterranean kind of style chicken, which was like a sumac chicken.
Ooh.
And then basically, in terms of a drink, most people, no, just basically anything that deals with a beach. I think the one offered in the book I have is called the Beach Comber, which is fine. But honestly, a beach themed drink works because that's where he ran into the old man. It is really interesting. So Justin Martyr, let me see if I have his date here. Yeah, he lived from 103 to 165. So we're talking like second, maybe third generation Christian. Like, in terms of like, Jesus ascended into heaven probably somewhere around 30 AD, and so then you have like one group of Christians that will probably last for about maybe 50 years. So 80 AD. So you get like, he's in like your second generation, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, then you got St. John that lived to be like 100. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so that's the guy. Now I know Justin Martyr is not necessarily as well known as some of the others. He is actually still fairly well known in terms of saints. Like I said, he is a very early forming one. They have an optional date to celebrate him on June 1st. I don't quite know what that's about, but still. April 14th is his date. Now, what is that? How's that? Now I'm trying to look at my calendar. Like, is that Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday.
Yeah.
So there you go. Get some beach theme things. If you want to have just a regular beach. See, this is the fun part about it. Like, you don't exactly have to have like an alcoholic beverage. You honestly, you know what you should do? You should go to like the Dollar Tree and get those like fake coconut cups.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And just have
We're having a martyr party.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Justin Martyr. Yeah. Saint Justin Martyr. Yeah. And martyr just means, person who died witnessing the faith. So
yeah.
Anyway. So yeah. There you go. So, all right. So that is my Saint in the Shadow.
And so it ends. The light shines in the shadow. And now you know more about the story of one of the saints of history.
All right. And that brings us to, I believe it's lectionary loop. Hold on. I hope I hit the right button. I did.
And it's time for Lectionary Loop and our look at the upcoming lectionary texts.
So this coming week, we enter into the Easter season, and the Easter season is filled with the appearances of Christ. And the first one is usually dealing with Jesus' appearance to his disciples directly after the resurrection. And specifically, there's two big things that happen here. The one I'm going to be focusing on Sunday is on Thomas. And, we sometimes call him Doubting Thomas because he doubted. And so that's obviously one part. Jesus appears to them in a locked room. The other part actually deals with, and this is actually a much bigger topic, in terms of some things, but like you have basically the institution of what we'd call confession absolution. Where Jesus breathes on the disciples and says, whatever sins you forgive are loosed in heaven, and whatever sins you bind are bound in heaven. Basically giving that role to the church. Because again, the disciples in this case are the representatives of the church. And so that's kind of what we see in terms of this coming lectionary, focusing in on Christ, on his appearing to his disciples, and still focusing in on the resurrection and the great and wonderful news that is. So I know that was rather quick, but at the same time, I'm just looking at the clock going, oh, we got to go.
Yeah, I know. We talk sometimes a lot.
Yeah, we talk. I know we did. We talked. So anyway, you got anything with that?
No. That's all I got.
All right. Well, then you know what that means, don't you?
Oh, I know.
Church chatter.
That's right. It's time for church chatter. It's time for church chatter. All right. So looking ahead at some things going on, we've made it through the Easter season, which was crazy, but we made it through it. But now looking ahead, we have a couple different things, at least at our church, coming up. One is we have confirmation coming up, and that is going to be on the first Sunday in May. So I think that's May 3rd. And looking forward to that. Always a good time. Got a good group of kids. I mean, I think I say that every year, but we do. We have a good group of kids that are going to be confirmed this year. They're doing fantastic. They're, like I said, they're just doing really good. So I'm excited. And then we also have a special combined service on May 17th. Now the special combined service is dealing with the school and the burning of the mortgage. We paid off the school, and that's awesome.
Oh,
And,
wow.
yeah, Good Shepherd Lutheran School. The building is officially paid off. And so we're going to kind of have a special services at 10 a.m. on May 17th. And we're going to go ahead and burn the mortgage. And so looking forward to that. And those are the big days that we have coming up.
You guys are burning the mortgage?
Well, you know what?
That's so fun.
Have you ever? Yeah, we're also, by the way, we're also going to be installing Miss Hicks as our principal. So
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so super exciting, super exciting. So yeah,
I love that you're burning the mortgage. I mean, you're literally doing it, right?
I think so. I think that's the plan.
Okay, because that's pretty fun. You know, don't let anybody tell you Christians can't have fun.
That's right. That's right. We have a good time.
We can have a good time.
Oh man! So what's going on in your neck of the woods?
Well, you know, I feel bad because we're just kind of wait until June, really, because that's when Pastor Walters is going to be coming in, and so we're kind of getting ready for that, and then that's pretty much it. We're still recovering from Easter, Easter just got done, so the other day, I mean, just this week, I was like, okay, I got to get songs picked out for this Sunday. And, we didn't I didn't have a sermon title or anything ready yet. Cause we're kind of like, everybody just kind of took a deep breath after Easter,
Yeah.
for a few days. And then, so we're just kind of getting back into it. I got VBS gotta start kind of looking into that a little bit for myself here. Cause, that'll be coming along. So yeah.
Well, all right then. Well, yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty awesome. Good to hear. We have VBS coming up too, but then June.
Yeah.
So yeah, looking forward to all that. So I think that's all we have for tonight. So I don't know. I'm still working on exit music. We don't have any exit music. I'm still working on it. But anyway, God's blessings to everybody. Bye.
Bye.